Okay, and we continue with our series on the wartime special duties units, and this is a unit that was not part of SOE or the normal intelligence setup, but it was set up during World War II, and the basic activity continues to this day. When Bomber Command in particular was flying numerous missions over enemy territory, it was found that quite a few of the aircrew who were hit by anti-aircraft fire or fighters managed to parachute to safety or survive crash landings. So there was a need to get these valuable aircrew back to safety. For many reasons, they were a national resource, but also for morale reasons. So thought was given to ways of doing this, and a chap was recruited who had served during World War One, called Clayton Hutton, and his book, Official Secret, is the story of his activities, and it's one of the most fascinating books to come out of World War II. His interest was in magic and illusions, particularly from the practical side, building illusions, apparatus, or working out how tricks and illusions were done. So that's kind of the mind he had. Winston Churchill once referred to recruiting people with corkscrew minds that don't think in straight lines, and Clayton Hutton certainly fits that bill. The organization he was recruited into, he doesn't mention it in the book because of secrecy, but it was MI9. It's known as MI9, the Escape and Evasion Service. And it was set up for that very reason of assisting aircrew and other military personnel who were behind or were in enemy territory, and to get back to the UK. And this could not be done without the help of the occupied countries' resistance movements. So you had the resistance in France and Belgium, in a way separate from what they were doing in the sabotage role, but setting up these escape lines to funnel personnel down a route and eventually to safety by either getting them to the coast and into a boat, getting them to where they could be picked up by Lysander, or getting them across the Pyrenees into Spain. They were the usual routes. As you may imagine, it was a very, very dangerous occupation. The resistance people, they wouldn't know if the person trying to contact them was a real Royal Air Force aircrew member or a double, a German or other Nazi sympathetic organization member trying to infiltrate the network. And this did happen. Similarly, the Air Force personnel would be on their toes trying to contact these people and worrying if they were getting in touch with the right people, or if it again was somebody who was a traitor. And a lot of the resistance people were betrayed, as I say, doubles or traitors, or not necessarily even on a political basis, but from pre-war jealousies, that one farmer's jealous of another farmer's farm, or he won a seat on the local council and I didn't, and you inform on him to the Germans, and this happened. So it was the security was very much a concern. However, they did successfully get a lot of people back, and so that was the on the ground side. And London wanted to set up as much in the way of support as they could. And one of the areas was in training and equipment. So the Air Force guys would be briefed, etc., on what to do, and then equipped with escape aids. When Clayton Hutton got involved, one of the first things he did, he talked to a chap, Wing Commander Embry, who had been in the First World War and had been captured and evaded and escaped from the Germans. And he said the biggest problem is food. He said it's on your mind all the time. And especially when you're burning calories because you're in a dangerous situation. So that was one of the concerns, was to supply the guys with compact, highly nutritious rations. Another area was navigation. So Clayton Hutton went and had maps printed on silk, because these could be concealed within clothing and didn't rustle, and paper maps would always be vulnerable if you had to cross a river and things like this. So and it's all detailed in the book, that what a difficult process it was printing on silk, particularly with silk being a very scarce resource because it's being used in parachutes. And then compasses. And they did manufacture button compasses, very tiny compasses that could be hidden in cufflinks, in the buttons on uniforms, within various parts of the clothing and so on. And they are still in existence and still get issued to prone to capture personnel to this day. So that was a thing. They also thought about how to improvise such things. So they trained the guys that you can use a razor blade, you can magnetize using static electricity, and use that as a navigation aid. So Clutty, as popularly known, he produced a tin, and it had lots and lots of things in it. It had a tube of condensed milk. It had like Horlicks tablets, things like this to eat, all the navigation aids, a Geesley saw, all sorts of things. It's fantastic. And it was packed in such a clever way. Well, if you took the stuff out, you couldn't put it back in. It was so cleverly packed together and compressed. And another thing they did was look at ways of adapting the uniform. So, for example, the air crews were issued with sheepskin-lined flying boots because it was very cold up at 20,000 feet in a Wellington bomber. And so they looked at these beautiful sheepskin boots, and they worked out a way that the top part of the boot could be detached by a little built-in blade that they had. You took this blade out and cut the stitching, and the two halves from each boot produced a waistcoat. And then what you were left with was a pair of civilian type shoes. So it was very, very clever. And they also had things like saws in the shoelaces, usually saws for cutting through things. So that was one area that they did. They also looked at the greatcoat, the overcoat, and looked at how it could be designed that you could easily make a civilian overcoat from it. Then they started looking at ways of communicating with the chaps in the prisoner war camps. And the way they set up a two-way communication system was amazing. The use of codes, smuggled in radios, very, very miniature radios, all sorts of things. Again, it's fascinating how they got past the German security people. One of the things they would do is, for example, they'd hide a compass or another piece of kit in chess pieces, and they would unscrew, but they would unscrew the reverse to the normal way. So if a German sentry or guard was inspecting stuff and he tried to unscrew it, he had to be tightening it. And they even had material between the halves of a gramophone record. They were put together and you could split them, and there was maps or documents inside there and code books and things like that. Absolutely fascinating stuff. And really written in a very easy way. After the war, he decided to write this book, and he came right up against official secrecy. That's why he calls the book Official Secret. It's the British disease, secrecy. As in Yes Minister, Sir Humphrey explains when the minister says, well, why does this have to be secret? And he says, oh, Minister, the Official Secrets Act isn't to protect secrets, it's to protect officials. And it's an instinct in the British civil service just to keep everything secret that they can. And he had a real uphill fight. He was demonstrating that a lot of the stuff he was talking about was in the public domain. There were articles in the Daily Express, for example, explaining all this stuff that he was writing about. And, oh, no, you can't write about it. To the point where they tried to prosecute him. And there's echoes. This was just after the Second World War, and they were using exactly the same procedures decades later when in the Spycatcher case, and also in the case of Soldier 5, the SAS soldier who tried to have his book about the Bravo 20 mission published in Australia. And they flew people out to Australia to try to have it restricted and banned. And using exactly the same tactics that they used against Clayton Hutton. So this book's got such a lot of interesting information. There's really interesting photos of the devices and the kit, how they conceal the stuff. Really, as I say, corkscrew minds and ingenuity, and it really was a great contribution to helping people escape and evade during World War II.